everybody! Sorry for not posting videos for like a month. I got kind of lazy. Posting videos is really fun, but it's just kind of like my little hobby. But a few people messaged me and said they missed my storytime videos, so I thought I would film this one. This is about honestly the worst person I've ever worked with in Japan. This isn't exclusive to Japan, like I've obviously worked in England too, and in every country really you'll work with people and maybe the chemistry is there and you'll make friends. Other times there'll be people that you don't like, but yeah, this person was just terrible, honestly. I think that they would be pretty hard for anyone to work with. This is a few years ago. This happened after the last video I made where I also had quite a bad experience in the school, and so my confidence was really low, and I was going into 2 new schools, and honestly I didn't have any confidence at all for teaching. I felt like really down and I just wanted to do my best, and honestly I went in with a mindset that I was just going to do exactly what I was told and I wasn't going to make waves and stuff like that. Honestly, working in Japan, I've had mostly amazing experiences teaching, but obviously there were some bad ones. And this is one of those. The first time you start a new job at school, you'll have to go in and introduce yourself to the principal, vice principal, and the people in charge. And usually that's like a day before you start working. It's honestly not a necessity, and sometimes they just skip it because they're busy. But on this day, I went to introduce myself to the first school I worked at. Everything went fine, just said hi, met everyone. And then my boss sent me the train station of the next school I would be going to, but because it's in kanji and he's a foreigner, I guess he read it wrong, and he sent me somewhere that was like 40 minutes in the wrong direction. And because I had attended the earlier meeting, by the time I got there it was like 4 p.m. I arrived and there was no like liaison to meet me, and I was just like, okay, well, let's just call it a day and I'll just greet them before I start work. But the teacher who I would be working with, apparently she complained and she was like really excited to meet me, and she said that I just had to go and spend another hour and not get there till like maybe like 5:30 or 6 and go meet them. So already I was kind of like, that was kind of like a red flag for me. I'm like, why are they so intent on meeting me? I'm gonna see them early morning tomorrow. So I took the train and went to meet them. And this school, the principal was a woman and she was fantastic. She was so like happy and genki and lively, and the kids really loved her, and she was really fun, and so that was great. But the teacher I would be working with, the moment she saw me, I saw like her face fell, because I'm very also like kind of fun, and like obviously I have blonde hair and I'm very outgoing and honestly sometimes a little bit loud, which is great if you're an English teacher, but sometimes when you get a teacher like this, they don't really like it. And I could see immediately she didn't consider me to be someone who would be like responsible and grown up and stuff like that, and it was kind of unfair because I'm very professional at my job. I do, honestly, I've never had any problems, so it's immediately I could tell that she judged me. This teacher, I'm gonna refer to her as Kusobaba because it sounds like her name, and Kusobaba is kind of like shitty old lady, and that's what I called her in my head. And a couple of times I accidentally almost called her Kusobaba sensei, which would have been terrible, but yeah, that's the name I'm gonna be using for her. So immediately Kusobaba, you could tell she wasn't happy with me. The previous English teacher was American and she had very short black hair and glasses, and she was kind of like introverted. She honestly looked just like Kusobaba, like they had the same style, they dressed the same, and I think Kusobaba liked her a lot because she saw herself in her, and they were both kind of like very low energy and like calm kind of people. When I go to work immediately, I'm like, oh, good morning everyone, how are you? So I got very popular, particularly at that school, because that school is like a very progressive new up and coming school, and everyone was quite young and very full of energy, so it was perfect for me. I got along with everyone so well, and I made quite a lot of friends that, like, some of them I still speak to this day. But yeah, so Baba didn't like that, and immediately the first day working, she kind of like gave me a rundown of what I would be doing. She reminds me of like Dolores Umbridge from the Harry Potter series. She looks exactly the same. She looked very froggy. She had short, curly, dark hair. She was in like her 60s, dressed very conservatively, and but she would always have this like smug smile. And when she was talking to me about what I would be doing, she was like, "Oh, I hope you can sing because that's what you're going to be doing. And I hope that you can play guitar because that's one of the requirements. And I hope that you can speak Japanese because that's what you'll need to be using sometimes." And it was very like condescending. And I was like, okay, I don't mind singing. I can't play any instruments. My Japanese is fine. And then she was like, oh, well, like, I hope that you won't be using Japanese in the classroom. I'm like, look, this ain't Mama's first rodeo. I've been a teacher for, like, a bunch of years already at this point. So I'm like, I don't need to be told how to behave in the classroom. But she would tell me how to do things as if it was my first day in Japan ever. And that was very, very annoying. And like the first day we weren't actually meeting the kids, but we have to prepare for them. So like we have to make, for the first graders, a bunch of name cards. And I think there was like, I don't know, like 70 or 80 of these things we had to make. She gave me the list that was like in Japanese and I had to write them in English. And it took quite a long time. Honestly, it took quite a long time. And then I did it, and then she saw it and she was like, oh, no, 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 no. Now this won't do at all. You need to be using this font specifically. Then you need to do it at this ratio, the size ratio for every single one. Then you need to be using this font specifically only for J's and K's. This font for I's, and this font, and it went on and on and on. So that took like a phenomenally long time, and it was just so unnecessary. And she used to do this a lot. She would tell me to do a task, and this was like every day. She'd tell me to do something, I'd do it, and she'd tell me I didn't do it right because I didn't do it in like the font that she wanted or like the size that she wanted, which she wouldn't tell me before. And I'd ask her like, oh, do you have any specifications? And she used to always be like, no, no, no. Then I'd do it, and it would be wrong. And that was every day for a year, and it honestly just drove me bonkers. We started the classes, the kids were great, they were lovely, and I noticed her teaching style was the kind of style that I hate, whereas everyone has to just sit quietly and listen to the teacher and only really answer when the teacher asks a question, and maybe like every class a couple of students will get to answer a question, but like mostly no one really speaks, and not really any games or anything like that, just very like repeating and listening. And I personally think that's the worst teaching environment to learn something that's communication based. But in this school I wasn't the main teacher, she was, so like whatever. And I noticed immediately she would kind of freak out if the kids laughed. And the first time I met them, I was like high-fiving them, and like my introduction's a little bit funny, and they would start laughing and she would freak out. She'd be like, no, no, be quiet, be quiet. And she used to say like, laugh in your heart. Love in your heart. So yeah, like particularly if you watched like a video that was really funny and they started laughing, she would pause it and then we'd have to wait for everyone, and she used to tell them and scold them to laugh in their hearts. And like laughing wasn't something they were allowed to do. They weren't allowed to get like excited. And like sometimes, particularly the little kids, because they're like from ages 6 and 7 up to like 11, they would sometimes be like, yeah, or something. And she used to get so angry about that. And I just feel like for someone who's so old and spent her life teaching, it just felt like she didn't really understand kids at all. So the other bad part was that wherever I was standing in the classroom, she always used to say I was in the way, and she would push me out of the way. So like the only place I could really stand was like at the far corner where the kids couldn't see me, and then yeah, she always used to say I was in the way and like push me out of the way. And even if there was lots of space for her to walk, she would say she couldn't walk, you should have to push me out of the way. And I swear that like psychologically messes with you, particularly when you're foreign and you really try to not be a nuisance or too noisy or in the way. After a year, it really started to get to me. She used to have this thing where she'd want me to sing like a cappella all the time. And honestly, at work I do sing a lot like to my kids, and it's funny. But she would find me songs I'd never heard of before and spring them on me in class. And like one was this really bizarre animal song with all like weird animals like peacocks and bisons, and she kept telling, she just started the music and was like, sing the song. And I said like, I don't know this song. She's like, what do you mean you don't know this song? It's in English. And I would have to try and sing songs I'd never heard before to tunes I've never heard before. It was just very, very bizarre and kind of like psychologically terrifying. Hands down, one of the most annoying things she would do is, technically I was allowed to go at 4 o'clock, but like usually you can leave earlier, right? Like if you've done everything. I wasn't allowed to leave until she told me I could leave. And sometimes that would be 3:30, sometimes that would be 4, sometimes that would be 4:30, sometimes that would be 5 o'clock. And that would really mess with me as someone that needs to have some sense of control. It just really freaked me out every day. I'm like, am I going to be able to go on time? Like what? And I used to, there would be nothing to do after class because she didn't want me doing any activities because she didn't trust me enough, I guess. So I would just have to sit there for an hour and just wait until she could tell me I could leave. And the other thing she did was, usually, and every single place I've worked at, and I've worked at like probably like 15 schools by now, they call you by your first name because, you know, like we're teaching a little bit of Western culture as well as just language. So I know like teachers, you wouldn't necessarily use your second name, but it just makes it more friendly, I guess. It makes the kids a little bit less scared of you. So I always use my first name, and I hate my second name. She wouldn't let me use my first name, and I said, oh well, you know, like usually that's how we would do it, you know. They would use my first name and just call me like Miss or add sensei onto that. But she absolutely refused. And she would say stuff like, oh, well, like, you wouldn't understand because you've only worked in public school before. Which isn't true because I've worked in private schools as well. But also, it doesn't really matter. And, like, I don't want them knowing my second name. One, because my second name's weird. Like, for a kid, it doesn't sound like a name in Japanese. It sounds weird in katakana. And also, I don't want them, like, searching my name online. And once they have your second name, that's what they can do. So I just didn't. But they constantly called me by my second name, which was hilarious because one of my students actually was taught by my friend in like an international weekend club, and he used to talk about me all the time, and my friend didn't know it was me for the longest time because the kid just kept saying my second name. And the worst part was they would often forget to put Miss or Sensei, so it would just be like calling me by my second name, which was just very strange. And I doesn't matter how many times I told her, she just wouldn't wouldn't let them call me by my first name, and that just really bugged me because names have so much power. And it's what I prefer. Like that's the only thing I really asked was like, just call me by my first name. Towards the end of working the first year with her, it kind of psychologically messed with me. Like I was always in the way. She wouldn't ever let me come up with any activities for any of our classes, so I had no control over that. She constantly said I wasn't a very good teacher because my voice is high. She said that, oh, I'm surprised that no one's ever told you you couldn't be a good teacher because of your voice. And she used to definitely do that kind of thing like every single day, and it didn't mess with me. And the funny thing is like the other school I worked at, I was teaching the classes completely by myself, never had any problems. But for some reason, like when I got in the classroom with her, I just got so nervous. And as I mentioned before, the principal was very, very upbeat and outgoing, and she was very into like active learning and like experimental things. And she kept telling the teacher I work with, Sobaba, please make the lessons more fun. Like I want to like, you know, do like moving and dancing and stuff like that. But the teacher, she kept saying, no, 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 that's not how English is learned. Like, we have to do this and we have to do that. And it was like, it was hilarious because no one liked her. Literally no one. None of the staff liked her. The principal didn't like her. I didn't like her. So I don't know for what reason she was doing this. And she was seriously dying on that hill. Oh yeah, and the worst part was because I went to the other school. I'm like, oh, like this activity you did was actually kind of cool. Can I use that worksheet for my class? And she'd say no. She's like, no, 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 no. These are trademarked. No, you can't use them. And stuff like that. Just being deliberately a pain in the ass. And she wouldn't let us do any like holiday stuff like Easter or Christmas or stuff like that because she didn't want to involve religion, which I get. But also I explained to her that like technically Christmas isn't really a Christian holiday. I mean, in my eyes, because it's based off of like, I don't know, like pagan rituals and stuff like that. And honestly, it was mostly stolen by Christians. And I'm like, how many fir trees have you seen in Jerusalem and stuff like that? But like, we used to argue about this kind of stuff all the time. But anyway, so like, no holiday stuff. The best thing that ever happened was almost the end of working with her, the end of that year. And I was honestly at the end of my rope. I was sick of her. And we were in the class. It was very quiet. Everyone was kind of like dozing off. She was talking and one of the kids left their bag handle kind of sticking out. And I swear to God, like no one would believe me if I told you what happened. This was just so bizarre. She was talking and walking and not paying attention and her foot got stuck. And I swear to God, she tripped and she did a double backflip. Like no one will believe me. I swear to God, she went like this in the air and she fell spread eagle starfish on the floor. And it was the funniest shit I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like, you know, I think like I manifested it in my heart. I'm not like a hateful person, but I always used to say I was gonna piss in her tea or something like as a joke. But oh my God, she was lying on the floor and like the worst part was is like normally a class would laugh, but it was just so shocking. For like a good 20 seconds we just sat there in silence looking at her. And then I went up to her, I'm like, are you okay? Did you fall down? Do you want to sit down now? Here you go. And I like pulled her up and put her in the chair and I'm like, okay, have a nice sit down, take it easy, yeah? And she was like, yes, yes. I mean, she was fine, but it was just so hilarious. And honestly, it's what she deserves. Just that every day. At the end of that year, we had a bunch of like drinking parties that were like free for us to go to. And then like I asked her like, oh yeah, what are your plans for next year? Are you coming back to the school? And she got really angry at me, like, we Japanese don't discuss stuff like that. We don't just ask people what they're doing, like, and like about personal stuff like that. And then as she said that, one of the younger Japanese staff was like, "Ne, Katie, like, are you coming next year?" And I'm like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, like, and that shut her down pretty quickly. But yeah, she'd often say stuff like that, like I was saying something stupid because I can't possibly understand Japanese culture. It was definitely just like a her thing. And the funny thing was is that she would always like lie about her age, and the kids used to ask her how old she was and she'd say, oh, it's a secret. Or she used to say that she was also the same age as them. And I tried to explain like it kind of messes with their reality. Like kids don't know really that much about age, and they only know like their age, their friends' age, their parents' age. So like if you say stuff like that, like, oh, I'm the same age as you, it kind of messes with them. And that's why when kids see someone like my age, my students literally think I'm either like 18 years old or like 50. Like they have no scope of reference. I try to be honest with them about how old I am, because like kids gotta know, like they think that 30 is like, you know, like one foot in a grave. And I just want them to know that it's fine and like aging isn't scary or anything like that. So yeah, then it ended up being the end of the year and things are wrapping up, and my biggest regret ever is the last nomikai that we went to, the last drinking party, and it was gonna be the last time that I ever saw her. She actually bought me like a little hair clip thing, which was nice of her. I bought her a present as well, and we said our goodbyes and stuff like that. And I honestly wish I had just told her, I just want you to know that this has been the worst year of my life. I've hated every minute working with you, you piece of shit. I hope you never ever inflict this on anyone else ever again. But I didn't. I just thanked her for the gift, and I'm 100% sure that she was retiring, and that's why she was so weird about me asking. And like, she was clearly very old, so I don't know why it should have been a secret or anything. The other terrible thing was this school, and a lot of schools have this, where the teachers have to join a club, and she picks my club for me. I'm like, okay, fair enough, because I guess she wanted me to be with her, which wasn't too bad. It was Kateka Club, which is home economics, so I'm mostly just like cooking things, and I got to eat a lot, so that was fun. What wasn't fun was the Kateka teacher was also like an older lady who was lovely, by the way. She was fantastic. After the class had finished, the kids had to, they had something else they had to go to. Like, these kids are also busy, so they would burn a lot of frying pans. Like, it would make like pancakes and stuff, and like there would be like 7 frying pans that like burnt crisp, and they'd say, oh my god, I don't have time, I know I've got to go, and they'd have to run to their next thing, and that would leave us with the cleaning. And so the 2 old ladies used to sit down and drink tea while Muggins here had to clean all the frying pans, the floors, because it's a kitchen, it's gotta be clean, right? So like, that was once a week for me, and it was at like 4 or 5 p.m. You really don't want to be cleaning after working like an entire day of English teaching from the morning. That honestly sucks. But you know, like, it was a good experience. We got to make jam and stuff, so I look back at it kind of fondly. So finally, why am I telling you this story? One, I just want to get this off my chest, because thinking about it even now just really boils my piss. But also, this is a type of person that you will frequently encounter when you're teaching in Japan. I've actually met like a couple of people like this. She's probably like the worst, and I think it's just important to know what you're up against. And honestly, like, I'm saying how much I honestly hated her, but at the same time, a lot of it was on me. I had very low confidence at that time, and I honestly let her walk all over me, and that was really up to me to stand up to her, and particularly tell her, I finish at 4 o'clock now, so I'm gonna leave, and stuff like that. And I think the one piece of information I want you to leave with this video is, if you start working here, is know your rights. And also, often you'll think, oh, this person knows better because they're Japanese, they know better than me, or they know the school better. Don't let them walk over you. And when you know in your heart that something is unfair, then you should definitely make waves, and you should definitely put your foot down and tell them that you don't undo it. And particularly because this woman was Japanese and she was older, and she had been working at this school obviously way longer than me, she felt that she had seniority, and actually our jobs were kind of like the same, and that was really my fault. I should have, oftentimes it's kind of like a power struggle, and I really should have tried harder to take my territory, as it were, because I feel like if I had done that, imagine how much more fun the lessons could have been, and maybe those kids would have liked English a little bit more. So honestly, that's on me. Anyways, thank you for watching. This was a very ranty, kind of rambly kind of video. Let me know what you'd like to see next. I know my dating in Japan videos are kind of a little bit more popular, so I'm gonna make some of those next. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe.